Good morning, Drive students. This morning I want you to get an idea of the concept of understanding grace. I want to give you a little bit of an illustration, but before I do, what we're going to look at is Romans chapter 6, verse 1. Paul's talking with the Roman church, and he's telling them about a problem that exists then in the church, and I believe still exists today in the church, and that is people that don't understand grace. We are saved through grace. We understand that. But what we tend to do is we tend to abuse God's grace. Think with me for a moment. Romans chapter 6, verse 1 says this: should we continue to sin so that God's grace would abound? Basically, Paul is asking, should we continue to sin so that God's grace can continue to cover our sin? And it's like, yay, God. Thanks, God. I'm going to keep sinning so that your grace keeps taking the forefront, and I can give you glory through that. And the answer Paul gives is this: God forbid. He doesn't say no, or maybe not a good idea, or try to do better. He says, God forbid that we should keep sinning so that God's grace can keep covering our sin. I want to illustrate this with the idea of a credit card. With a credit card, what I can do is I can go into a store and make a purchase, and I slide my card. Or, as I used to do, I used to work in retail for a while, and whenever the card reader would not be working, we had this thing that looks like this. And it was called a credit card crunch machine. That's what we called it. And this machine you would take and you put it down and you get one of these little white carbon copy pieces of paper. You take the credit card and you put the credit card on there. You lay the carbon copy paper on top, and then you proceed to crunch the card. And now you had documentation of how much something cost, and you could file it later. So what I want you to understand is this idea of the credit card being like sin. I know I just won a point there with Dave Ramsey, but this credit card is not sin, but it's going to represent our choices to sin. So what we tend to do is we go in through life and we decide that, hey, I desire to do this, even though it's contrary to the nature of God, the character of God. I want to go and do it. Therefore, I crunch my card. So then I realize it's wrong, but then again, you know what? I don't know that it's really wrong, so I'm going to do it again. And I keep crunching my card. As a believer, we can understand this, that as we have racked up a bill on our credit card of sin in our life, Jesus, when he died to pay your bill in full. You no longer have to pay the debt you incur on your credit card because Jesus paid for it all on the cross. All the sin that you racked up before knowing Jesus and even after knowing Jesus, he paid it all. Now, with that idea in mind, most of us would go, hey, if he's already paid the bill and he's going to continue to pay the bill, then I'm going to keep on crunching. I'm going to go to the store, put my card in, and I'm going to crunch as much as I can to make it really worth it. That's what's happening in Romans chapter 6, verse 1. People are abusing God's grace. To have a proper understanding of God's grace, it would be this. We understand that we sin. We understand, kind of like the credit card, that when we sin, we're crunching it. We're adding to the bill that Jesus has paid. But when you come to the point where you understand that Jesus died and paid for your bill, you then, out of a sense of love, and out of a sense of a desire to worship the one who has paid your bill, you're going to desire to swipe your card or crunch your card less and less and less. You may still crunch it. We have a human nature. We don't have to crunch it because it says that we have the power to not sin. If you continue reading through Romans chapter 6, you're going to find that we don't have to give ourselves to sin. It's our choice to crunch our card. So what real understanding of grace is that God has paid your bill. No matter what you have put on your card, Jesus has paid it through his death. But out of a sense of love and worship for the one who paid your bill, you're going to want to crunch it less and less. So students, today, think about, what are you crunching in your life? Are you living with the mindset of, hey, Jesus paid it all, therefore I'm going to rack up a bill? Or is it because Jesus has paid it all, and you realize the awfulness that you have had on your credit card and the life that God has given you by paying the debt of your credit card, that you desire to swipe your card less and less. That is an understanding of grace. So don't continue crunching. God forbid.